Well, I am seriously considering making a run for the upper house of the Victorian State Parliament.
Let's go.
Next year on this issue, because it is a real moral issue of seriousness. And I don't think the majority of people in this state really want ultra-expensive housing, ultra-expensive rent.
Welcome to Whatever It Takes. We're joined here today by one of Australia's greatest success stories. And today's particular episode is all about the importance that franchise systems have played in the Australian economy. And the person that we have on the show today is someone who's been behind one of the biggest household names of franchises in this country, Jim Penman. And Jim has had quite the story to share, and we're very blessed to have Jim on the show. Jim, welcome to Whatever It Takes.
Good to be here.
Mate, there's so much to speak to you on. If I can just open up and just say you're very approachable. And I feel like this is a great podcast. It's a different podcast, I should rather say, to what we normally have, because I probably didn't expect it to be this approachable. So I just want to be grateful to you. You are giving us your time, and for that, we're very grateful.
Yes. Well, one of the things you've got to recognise, I'm a lot more famous than I'm rich. So I'm not quite as important as you might think.
No, but nonetheless, you know, it's you've got a lot of moving parts happening in your, no doubt, in your day to day, and so for that we're very grateful. Jim, why don't we kick off? Perhaps you can tell a little bit about your story. Where did Jim begin? The Jim's group begin, and
Well, start from the very beginning. I've done gardening since I was 8 years old, so this is a long time. This is 65 years of gardening experience in the industry. But basically what happened is I went to university to do a degree in what turned out to be history, trying to understand the reason for the rise and fall of civilizations. It's about the furthest you can get from a normal business you could think of, with the aim of becoming an academic. Now, as part of that process, as my part-time student job, gardening, mowing lawns, of course, it pays pretty well, especially in your own business when you're mowing a lawn.
For sure. And
it's outside, and you've got fresh air, and you've got trees and grass and things. So it's good balance. So that's how it started. Then I got to 1982, finished my PhD, originally got it knocked back. I got it later. But there was no possibility of an academic career because my ideas were too wildly unorthodox. And not only was I not a specialist in any period of history, but I come to the conclusion that the reason for the changes in history were to do with biology. So what I really wanted to do was to continue my research in an area that has involved with things like genetics and neuroscience and biology.
Oh, interesting. So
I have no training, no money, in fact, deeply in debt. And I didn't have any useful skills except I knew how to mow lawns pretty well.
I love it. I love it. And I guess to your point, I find that very true. On one side, you were on the academic side, but getting that balance of actually being out and about.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, that must be truly a good balance that you can sort of orchestrate.
It was wonderful. It was great. I used to work 52 weeks of the year. I didn't take holidays. I never liked that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you'd spend a day or two working outside, good money, even bought a house as a result of it as a student.
So good.
Yeah. And it helped. It made me healthier, more active and so forth. But then, so 1982 came along, flat broke, deeply in debt actually. I just started mowing lawns full time. And I built it up. I started building up and selling lawn mowing rounds. I put on subcontractors. Then after a few years, a company called VIP came into Melbourne, interstate lawn mowing franchise.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrified me. I thought they'd crush me. I actually offered to join them. I actually said to them, I will help to build VIP in Victoria for you. I will help you to succeed, because I didn't think I could compete. And they said, no, thank you.
Wow.
So I went to the Franchising Expo in 1988 at the old exhibition buildings. I went up to the stand and I said, I'm very interested in VIP. Can you tell me about it? And they didn't ask me why I wanted to know, but he gave me all this information, gave me this brochure, walked away. I said, okay, what these guys have done, it makes sense. It really does. I can see a reason why you'd want to buy a franchise, why you'd stay with the franchise. But I reckon I can maybe do something that'll be better for franchisees. So I launched my first franchise in June 1989. Somebody asked me at the time how many franchisees I might have one day. I said, if it works well, I'm not sure if it will. If it works well, maybe one day I could have 100. That's what I said.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
Wow. And here we are. How many franchises are we at the moment?
5,500.
That's incredible, Jim. That's fantastic. And how did the other divisions sort of come in? Was it just looking at gaps that grew over time? Was that kind of how your Jim's building, Jim's test and tag sort of came along?
Services are very similar in terms of the way they operate, in terms of somebody ringing up or booking to get a job done and somebody going out and quoting, whether it's mowing, cleaning, whatever, it's the same kind of thing. So the obvious thing was we've got this technology, we've got these computer systems and so forth we were developing. So let's try cleaning. What about cleaning? Now, here's the thing. This guy with the beard and the hat, this is a mowing contract. That's what I used to look like. I've even got the hat on because I had fair skin, so I had to have something to protect myself. And you don't want a broad brimmed hat because when you're walking under branches, it'll get knocked off.
Right.
So that's the hat.
That's the hat.
That's what I look like. So that's a gardening image of a gardening guy. Now, obviously, clearly, if you've got somebody as a cleaner, you don't want a gardening image, do you? Especially if it's a woman. It's completely inappropriate. So I developed this brand called Sunlight, with little sprays and stuff, and they sold a couple of franchises, found I couldn't get the work for them, gave them their money back. I said, sorry, it's not working. Then somebody came to me and said, what about Jim's cleaning? And I said, no, not going to work. They said, why not? I said, because it's a gardening image. This is a guy with the beard and the hat. I had the beard in those days. I'm not always wearing the hat.
Yeah.
And it won't work. And they said, we think it will work. And I said, no, it won't work. It cannot work. It's the wrong brand. It's a mowing brand. You can't transfer it to cleaning. And they said, well, look, we're so convinced it'll work that we'll go into partnership with you. We'll actually put up the resources to make it going. So they launched Jim's Cleaning, and it did work.
Here
and
we
you
go.
can tell because they go and approach somebody and say, oh, we're from Jim's Cleaning. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, so is the mowing. Oh, yeah, okay, all right, give you a go. That's how it works.
It was almost transferable because it has an origin behind it, right? If you look at all the logos, we know that it started somewhere. And I think with these other divisions...
Well, you look at Virgin, for example. Virgin's a record store. Yeah. Now it's a cola, it's an airline, it's goodness knows what else.
Yep.
So brands are extraordinarily transferable. Once you've got it, it doesn't almost matter what you do with it because the recognition is there.
Yep. I want to just switch gears here just for a quick second because that's an unbelievably amazing story of how the franchise network came about. And in a second, I'll kind of go to what it takes to run a successful franchise, right? But as you sort of built out this dream of 100 odd franchises initially anyway, what did that involve? Because by golly, that's jumping from being a sole trader to something a little bit more scaled, right?
Well, I always had subbies. And I used to build up and sell lawn mowing grounds. So I knew something about selling businesses and stuff.
Yes.
So I learned a lot. Also, my first dozen or so franchisees were actually people I already knew.
Yeah.
Because what happened is I went to my best subbies. Most of them weren't particularly good, but some of them gave great service. I said to them, hey, I'll give you a real good price on a lawn mowing franchise, a Jim's mowing franchise. And also there were some people that I really had sold businesses to in the past. And I went to them and said, hey, but I'll give you a franchise. So I had my first dozen or so fairly quickly, and they were good guys. So that gave me a really good start. I didn't start from nothing. Even things like how you sell. Now, for example, I am very poor social skills. My wife describes me as having Asperger's, all right? Which very, I offend people easily. I get so obsessed. I've got that kind of thing, so I was terrible. So I was building up lawn mowing grounds and trying to sell them, and I was really pathetically bad at it. I was honestly, you could not believe how bad I was. I got to the stage where I would employ a professional salesperson to sell lawn mowing grounds, sitting in this little backyard bungalow thing I had.
Right.
And I'd be pretending to work on the computer while he did the selling. That's how little confidence I had in my ability to sell. And then I learned how to sell, and it was the most amazing and most important business experience lesson of my whole life. When I went to see somebody from my church who was in the advertising business. He was an advertising agent. He had a successful business, much more successful than me.
Yeah.
And I went to talk to him to ask his advice. And he invited me into his office. And for half an hour, he told me about advertising. He told me about how to advertise, where to advertise, what kind of message, this kind of stuff. Great media, all the rest of it. This guy, experienced, knew everything. At the end of it, he said to me, Jim, at this stage, you don't really need an advertising agency because, you're just not there yet. And I walked out of his office and I knew that if I ever needed an advertising agency, I would go to him, which I did many years later when I went on television and stuff like that. But then I thought about it. I said, what on earth has he done? He hasn't told me anything about his business. He hasn't shown me any of his clients. He hasn't told me what he's charged. He's told me nothing about his business, and he's completely sold me on his services. And I was walking quite a few steps, quite a while to get my car was parked, which is a really unbelievably crappy old Holden Kingswood in those days. No, I never used to lock it because nobody would steal it. They might pick it up as being abandoned. It was the worst car. And as I walked back to the car, I was thinking about this, and I thought the only interest Peter had was my welfare and the welfare of my business. And by doing that, he completely sold me on his business. And I remember just reaching out to the handle of the car, which was not locked, and I wonder if this could work for selling lawn mowing rounds. So the next time somebody approached me about buying a lawn mowing round, instead of talking about my business, I said to him, tell me, do you know what the cut of a lawn mowing round means? Now, a cut is each job done once. If you've got 60 customers worth $80 a week, you've got a $4,000 cut. And the value of businesses in the paper was always based on the cut value. But most people, and you didn't know that. So I started talking about, explain what it was. I talked about the business. I talked about the kinds of earnings. I talked about how you advertise, everything. It came to see me, I did the same thing. I just talked about the business, how you can be successful, even how you can start your own. Everything I knew, which was quite a lot.
Yes.
Because I was a successful mowing contractor. At the end of it, I said, I've got some customers in your area. This is a summary. Okay, that's my sales pitch. A little while later, somebody came to me, he rang me back. And he'd been keen to see me, and he said, Jim, I want some advice. And I said, sure. He said, I've been offered a lawn mowing business in my area. Which is a better business, that one or yours? So he's asking me to recommend whether he should buy my business. So I said to him, okay, got to be real about this. I said, okay, what's the cut?
Yep.
How many customers? How far apart are they? How long has he had it for? What's he going to be doing?
What's your methods of success? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, is he getting out of the business entirely? I mean, there's all these questions that anybody in the industry would know how to ask. At the end of it, I said, that's a better business. Go and buy that one. Even allowing for the fact that we replaced jobs, it was a better business. Okay?
I think there's something to be said around ethics of conversation, which I think is...
I got asked the same question 3 times in a very short period of time. Each time they asked me which was the better business. Each time I told them to go and buy the other business. And the third time I said, that's a better business because it's more local. He's charging too much, offer him this price. That's a better business for you. So I gave away 3 sales. But they all came back to buy from me. Every single one of them. And as soon as they started taking that approach, I had no more problem with sales.
Wow. That's so good.
Now, that is the greatest lesson I ever learned. So that when I started selling lawn mowing businesses, it was the same thing. What's in your interest? I would put people out on the road. I would screen them. And if they didn't do well in the trial, I would not sell them a franchise. And VIP, nobody did that. In the industry, they still don't do it.
Buy your way in.
We screen.
Yeah.
One of the somebody who worked for a company called Johnny King actually asked him once, he worked for me briefly, I said, what's your criteria that you were told for selling a franchise? He said $50,000 on a pulse. That's what he was told by his superiors. So we had a policy from the beginning that said, I'm not going to take anybody. So that when somebody come to see me, they'd be questioning me, I'd be questioning them. So is your wife in favour of this? What have you been doing? Do you understand the problems with it? I would talk about the business. I would talk about...
Oh, that's so good. It's amazing.
And suddenly this nerdy Asperger's quasi-autistic guy suddenly becomes very good at selling because they stopped worrying about what I was going to get and started worrying about what the other person was
correct. I was just about to say that it's even in our discussions leading into this podcast, I've noticed that's comes along with your nature. And I think there's something we can all take away from that. I'm certainly got the Rain Man happening right now on the other side of this table, in the sense that if you make it more about them, be ethical and also vulnerable, quite frankly, that's pretty attractive to knowing who we want to deal with, right? So
it is. And you don't actually, in gyms we have a name for it. We call it selling by not selling. It's the same thing. Look to the interest of the person you're dealing with. But then when you're dealing with a customer, what's in their best interest? And sometimes their best interest may not even be doing what you want. I remember a story about, this was a big hardware chain in America. I forget the name of it. You probably know it. But there was a story I was reading about where the one of the big wheels of the business was visiting a store, and a customer came up to him and said, listen, you've got somebody who's just cost you a lot of money, this worker. He said, because I'd gone in to pay several $100s for something, and he actually showed me how I didn't need it, and he could do the same thing for $2. And this big wheel this manager said to him, tell me who it is. I want to see him. And the guy said, I'm not going to get him in trouble. I know he's cost you money, but he said, no, tell me who it was. So he went up to him and shook his hand and gratitude and said, well done. Because he looked to the benefit of the customer first.
Right. Makes you more memorable. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here we are having a conversation about somebody else's story because it was memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I remember the name of the company. Was what
I know. Is it a very big chain? It'll probably come to me at some point.
Big American hardware chain. But I remember that story, and it's the same idea.
Yeah.
If you look to the interest of the person you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
That is the greatest power. And sometimes in franchising, that means you've got to say no to somebody. Like we had one case of a lady rang me about a problem with the contract, and wasn't getting through, and she rang me, and I started asking questions because this was done by one of my franchisors, a sale, and she'd been to training, so she knew I had my contact details, my phone number, and everything. And then I asked her about what I was doing. She said, I found out she was buying the business on behalf of her son. Her son is in early 20s, and I asked why. She said, because he can't find a job. And I said to her, we're not going to sell your son a franchise. It's just not going to happen because that is a recipe for failure. You'll provide them the money, and he's in that situation, no way. And she said, I'm really sorry I rang you. It's a big mistake. And I said, it's not. It's a very sensible thing you did. She said, what do I do? He hasn't got any work. I said, I've got a couple of guys in the area who are overloaded with work. Why don't I organise him to go out on the road with them and get a job that way?
Get a taste and feel of the business as well.
Went out on the road with two guys, absolutely hopeless. There was no possible way this young man was going to succeed. Now, 10 years' time, different experience, go to work for McDonald's or somewhere, get some life, maybe.
Yes.
But right now, no. So you've got to do the ethical thing. Now, I was so upset about that when the regional franchise came up for renewal, I said, you're not going to renew, you're going to sell. Because it was a basic breach of ethics to put somebody on that you must have known would have no reasonable chance of success.
Absolutely. And I think that's a key thing for any business owner. I own a business myself, and whether you're in franchise or not, it's being able to say no when you need to say no. I got to say, in the story of YBL, our digital marketing agency, it's now more of the no's that have helped me grow than saying yes to everything, which is what I initially did. So ethics play a big part in that, which I think is important to keep note of. When you see your franchisees come on board into the gyms group, how do you pick them out to know that, hey, I mean, you gave an example there of where that's not a good fit, right? What sort of criteria do you normally look for in saying, hey, this guy Alvin over here might be a good fit for us?
I don't directly do it myself these days. In the early days, I was doing all the screening myself. But look, there's certain things you look for. Young parents buying the business, absolute no-no. You look at things like research. The more research somebody's done, the more questions they ask, the better the questions they ask. That's a very good sign. Is their partner in favour? If they're not in favour, your chances of success are a lot less.
Oh, yeah.
I want to put them out on the road and have a look at them. See how they go. Put them out with one of the trusted people who've got no financial interest in passing them. I have to say, we don't pay them to pass. We might pay taken out, but we don't pay them to pass it. So what's your opinion? And if they come back to me and say something like, I'm not sure, I'd say, if you had a second trailer you wanted to put somebody in charge of, would you put this person in charge? And invariably they say no. Well, that's that case. We wouldn't either.
Yeah.
So you look at that. You look at the background. The steadier the background, the more responsible position, the better. They've got to impress you. They've got to speak in a reasonable manner. Any sort of arrogance, any sort of refusal to listen, being late for an appointment and not apologising, any signs of poor behaviour is good. When they come here, I don't directly screen people, but I always ask the staff in our conference centre, where we had lunch just before.
Oh, yes.
I said, any problems? Anybody being difficult? Anybody being rude? We had one particular case of a person who came through. Now, this was not just for franchise, but franchise or training. He rather crudely hit on a female member. Absolute no.
Yeah.
So you make the best judgment you possibly can based on those kinds of things. But look, most people who have got the nous to come up with money to buy a franchise have got sense. We're not talking about knocking out 90%. We're talking about knocking out 10, 15, 20%.
Yeah, I mean, the due diligence would have a part that will have a lot of it to do with gut feel as well. But no doubt, you've got to do what's right by not just the group, but I guess the end customer, right? And who they're going to deal with and what that experience looks like.
With the customer, most of all with the franchisee themselves.
Yes.
It's a funny thing. See, one of the reasons when I started off, I didn't think I'd have so many. Like, I have a competitor who's got 250, and I thought maybe 100. My feeling behind that was that I'm never going to grow as fast because I'm going to knock back a lot of people. But what I didn't realise at the time was that actually having a screening process is better, because what it means is that when somebody was coming to me and basically saying, why would I buy from you? You're a smaller company, you're running it from your basement, they're established, they're interstate, they've got fancy offices, why would I buy from you? I had a magic weapon. I had a list of my current franchisees with phone numbers. And I'd say there are some differences. I wouldn't bag the opposition. It's not a good idea. No. I would say there's some differences, we work in a different way. But here's a list of my franchisees with phone numbers, and this was decades before the franchising code said you had to give it. Go and ring them, ring as many as possible. And then you go and ask for their list, which I was being quite precious because I knew they wouldn't give them the list. The point of it is when people rang them on my list, they'd say yes. The great majority said yes, it's working well, I'm happy, I get well looked after. Okay, it's a great experience. Not everybody, but the great majority will say that list, what did it? So when you put somebody on who's not suitable, what you have is somebody who's failing, and they're not going to blame the system. They're not going to blame themselves. They're going to blame the system, and then they're going to say this is a lousy system. It doesn't work. There's not enough support. There's not enough leads. You can't make money out of it. So you're negativity, and they'll spread negativity to others, and they'll tell everybody they've failed because Jim's is lousy. But even the fact that you're running a selection process actually is good, because it actually means that instead of you trying to convince somebody to buy, they're going to convince you they're good enough to be in your business.
Themselves.
No, they're going to convince me.
Yes, that's right.
When they go out on the road,
absolutely,
they've got to feel that they're running a test. They've got to show they're good enough. Psychologically, that's very different to selling. It's actually granting. You don't sell a franchise, you grant a franchise.
Oh, I like that.
Which people like McDonald's have done from the beginning, and they've done it very well. Yes. I admire McDonald's, I really do. McDonald's is a great franchising company. Disgusting, unhealthy food. I would not let my kids eat it, but as a franchisor, they are brilliant.
Yeah.
And my son, my 16-year-old son, is just starting work with McDonald's shortly, and I'm delighted. I say, don't eat the food, Aaron, but learn them. These guys are good.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of systems, you guys have, in my opinion, and I've followed it for a little while, at least through online, and through my connections at BNI who have told me about the training here. That's quite a program, isn't it? Like you're dedicating a theatre and you're talking through everything. What in a gist, what does that look like? What does the onboarding look like? What is the...
Well, it's a 2-day generic talk.
Yep.
My first one is me. I talk for an hour and a half. I call it the Jim's ethos.
Yes.
Service to customers, service to franchisees. What we're going to demand of you, which is very tough. The systems, how we get customer service, which is even tougher. They don't talk about what we do for you and how we help you and how we make that happen. All the strengths of the contracts, which are very, very strongly give very strong rights to franchisees. For example, franchisees in our systems, they can vote out their own franchisor. They can change franchisors. They can veto changes to their manual. All kinds of rights. They own the right to clients. Cannot be taken off them without their consent. They've got an automatic right of renewal. There's a whole stack of stuff in there that protects franchisees very strongly. So I explain that system to them. Then you have other speakers who go on about things like about upselling and so forth, and bookkeeping and use of software systems and social media and a whole lot of topics. Really design every single one to say, what can we teach you that will be the maximum help? And at the end of it, I do the last session, it's about money. How to get more leads using our system, other ways, referrals, upsells, the kind of phrase you can use, and how to increase your hourly rate. So that's the talk. It takes 2 days. Now, it works. And we know it works for one simple reason. We used to have most service businesses, you go into a service business like cleaning or gardening, your attrition rate in the first year is around about 90%, depending on what you read, but 90-95%, around about that. Okay. About 5 to 10% will be there after 12 months. Right. With us, traditionally, statistically speaking, we lost about 17%, about 1 in 6 in the first year, which is better. But as soon as we put this course into place, our attrition rate dropped to 10.5% straight away. Fantastic. So more than a third of the people we were losing in the first year, we were no longer losing. And that just showed the value of what we did. So we're always trying to improve that course. How can we do it better? Every course, it's the toughest course to teach you can imagine, because every attendee rates every speaker in that course, including myself. And then we look at those figures and we look at the comments on it. I read every single comment and every single person to know how we can improve. Yes. We just got the feedback today from New Zealand training. I just looked at that this morning. The New Zealand training was last week. And we went through and had a look at it. Okay, this was a problem here. This was the problem here. How can we improve?
Wow, that is fantastic. I mean, especially at the juggernaut size that this franchise group has gotten to still take time and look at improvement. That's pretty admirable. There's a lot to learn there.
That is the key to business, Alvin, as you know yourself. Yeah. It's not a case of starting off with the sharpest mind, or even sometimes the hardest work ethic. It's that you've got to work hard. Obviously, it's looking at your business every day and saying, how can I improve? The good people are the ones that constantly ask that question, endlessly self-critical. The poor ones are the ones that say, if something goes wrong, it's not my fault. It's the system's fault. It's the client's. It's the economy.
I agree, Jim. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Jim's has quite a presence in the networking community. It'd be remiss of me not to sort of talk about, or as an area director of BNI myself, I get the pleasure of bumping into quite a few Jim's representatives almost every week. Yes. And I can see that it plays a real important role. I think we were talking at the cafeteria earlier. Jim's building inspections, there must be a couple of them that I'm just starting to see are actually one of our biggest referral takers from the network. And so where do you think, putting BNI aside and not isolating that in itself, but networking, how important is that for a franchisee, whether that be through chambers or whatever that might be? Would you say that's pretty critical in the journey of a franchise?
It's very helpful, but it does depend to a certain extent on the nature of the business. Now, look at something like dog wash or mowing. They don't network a lot because they tend to get flooded with work very quickly if they don't need to. But when you've got a business like building inspections, perfect example, conveyancing, bookkeeping, IT, those kinds of businesses, test and tag, those kind of businesses that need to directly approach people, where they can't just rely on the leads flooding in. Networking is crucial. Now, networking can be BNI. We certainly encourage that. And as you know, BNI is actually a sponsor, and they come to every training. They have somebody here to attend because it's a very valuable thing. We even have a system that says that we have a system called pay for work guarantee. So that, for example, if you are a mowing contractor and you franchise and you're starting up and you say your pay for work guarantee is $2,000 a week, if you're not making that, you've gone off for free services. Now that's possible for that, but you can't do that for something like building inspection. You can't offer a free building inspection because it's a big thing.
Right.
So what we actually do is we have a system that says, okay, in this situation, if you do promotional activities, like if you go and talk on property managers and so forth, or you go to a BNI meeting, we will pay you to do it, because we know that if you do that, you will actually pick up a lot more work in cash than it's costing us to get you to go there.
Absolutely.
So you pay people to promote themselves, and networking is one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah, no, we've just found gyms continues to be, at least in my region, which is northwestern Penrith, in Sydney, gyms absolutely seems to be the group name that almost like every chapter I speak to my presidents and my vice presidents, and whenever we look for a category that's missing, or if there's a seat that needs to be there, it's not uncommon from say, oh, couldn't we get somebody from gyms? Do we know anyone in gyms that can kind of fill that seat? So
we've got a new division, gyms health coaching too.
Oh yes, I saw
the
that.
Life coaching, which is great, and we've got the first franchise. He's done very well. He's pretty much flat out, but largely within gyms. It's our internal network.
Yes,
but that is where we're encouraging them to go to. First of all, to network within gyms, but also to network with groups like BNI, because that's the way it's done. And once you start exposing people to your business and you start using services back and forth, it's very powerful. In fact, one of the problems we have with networking groups within gyms is that people who network successfully in these groups, on the whole, don't do it for long because they get too busy. So networking is extremely important. And in my course about income, I teach networking. I talk about networking as a very crucial skill.
Well, it's such a personal business, Jim, that you've helped to deliver, but also that these franchises live and breathe with every day. And so nothing is as powerful, I believe, as this stuff. And having that personal connection, and I guess in the senses of BNI in itself, it's regular, and it means showing up, and that credibility is built over the year, and so I can see why you're such a big advocate of it. And there are plenty of networking groups that also would support, I would imagine, the network. And life coaching is a very interesting new division for you. And for those that don't know, there was an interesting post from Joel about Jim's marriage counselling. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out one of his most recent posts, and you can work out the riddle there. But
it's a bit of a joke, actually. Well, in fact, I've been divorced 3 times, so
that's right. You're probably one of their key customers.
If you want to know how to be successfully married, well, just don't do what I do.
Yes, absolutely. It would be remiss of me not to ask, how many different divisions do you have? And what's around the corner? I'd love to know. I mean, life coaching is obviously a new division. How many current gyms-based businesses do we have, and how many do we have around the corner? Is there more to come?
There's about 50, yes. We've got Jim's Towing, we hope to start soon. Jim's Epoxy Floors, that's another one that's coming up. They're the 2 most immediate I can think of. But I would probably get at least every week at least one person proposing a new division.
Yes.
And there's a process that we go through. Look, does it conflict with an existing division? Is it big enough? Because we need to work on scale, because our fees aren't that high. You need about 20 franchises to be viable. And then I look at the individual concerned, what they're like, what their background is, what they know about the business. Quite often a franchisee or somebody internal starts these new divisions too. Like Laundry would start one of our cleaning guys. And he achieved 120 franchisees in 3 years. And Bill, amazing guy, great mentor to other people. He's done so well. So we've got some exciting. We've got some great people.
Yeah, and I think that's where it starts from. The thing I've admired from actually following Jim, your posts and everything like that online is just how in tune you've been with the way the world is changing. You guys haven't had an issue having a laugh at something or creating a meme on something or having an April Fool's joke about something. I think that makes
that's a lot of fun, Joel. And we pack ourselves laughing doing some of these things.
Absolutely.
The funny thing is that some people take it so seriously. I had a contact of mine who's a journalist with News Corp, and he rang me up and said, Jim, what's this thing about Jim's Airlines? And I said, Jared, look at the date. You said, oh.
So good. So good. And I think the group itself is so human. Mm-hmm. I can only continue to see soaring success for you guys because it's so relatable. And I was telling Joel earlier, I've been following his stuff for years, and just seeing some of the posts around even just having conversations around mental health. I think it's really good.
Yes.
It's not spoken about enough. But on that vein, AI is coming in. It's probably the talk of the town if it's not already in 2025. How has AI and digitization of the business, I'm sure you've seen so much change over the decades, Jim.
It's starting to have an impact, actually. We're just starting to think of how we can apply it. One of the most interesting things, if you go to jimpenman.com.au, there's Digital Jim. So it's actually got over 1 million words. I think 1.5 million words so far of everything I said. So if you ask it a question, it'll actually give, for the most part, a very plausible, reasonable answer. Right. Which is in line with what I think. So that's fun thing about AI.
Jim's GPT coming out soon.
and Joel reckons by the time I've got about another 20 years left, by the time I'm gone, that'll be so good that you won't need to, because you'll just use Digital Jim to make all the decisions.
So good. Is there any digital divisions coming up? I was interested to know.
Well, actually, Jim's Antennas is really Jim's digital, because most of what they do is things like connecting things up.
Yes.
Like, for example, if you want to connect up your Wi-Fi in the house, you get Jim's Antennas to come in, and they do it, and they'll put up the screens and they'll link them all up and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess that particular arm of the business.
That's the biggest digital one.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll probably do. Actually, I've got a guy coming from New Zealand talking about Jim's digital marketing. He's actually interested in doing that as a new division too. It's just very, very early discussions, but
yeah. Absolutely, and it can probably help out your other divisions in many.
Well, that'll be another good one for you if we go ahead with it, because that'll be a good one for networking for BNI.
Yeah, that's it. We should probably have a conversation around that after this. But just looking ahead, Jim. I mean, it's outside of the controls that franchisees, franchisors, and the leadership team has in the Jim's group. No doubt, there's a lot of macro influences that come in and come out. I know you've been one not to mince your words about how you feel about government involvement. So I'd love to know, in terms of how business is being operated in the economy and its current state, and what are your thoughts? I'd just like to kind of just open it up and go, hey, our franchises are the core backbone of the Australian economy, being well supported enough.
No. What's been done is pathetic. Look, they started inquiries into the franchising code many years ago, and I've spoken to everybody that's ever said anything since then, and I said, there's one thing you've got to do, which we've done ourselves. You interview, you poll every franchisee from every division anonymously, confidentiality, and you post them in public. And then anybody who's interested in a franchise gets directed towards that site. Now, if you've got scumbag franchisors who don't look after franchisees, they will get killed so quickly. No bureaucracy, no paperwork. Now, what have they done? No to that. Absolute no. Not interested in that. What they've done is developed a disclosure document. Now, this disclosure document is so dense and legalistic that most lawyers can't understand it. I ask 100 people in training, has anybody read the disclosure document? Not one person put out a hand. Not one person has read this. It is an absolute gift and a godsend for the most exploitative, unscrupulous, blood-sucking parasites you can imagine. Because all they've got to do is to put all the bad stuff into the disclosure document in a place they know perfectly well nobody will ever read. They're covered against any evil thing they want to do. It is a feeding frenzy for lawyers and bureaucrats. It is completely, insanely unhelpful. I have never, ever seen any franchisee ever got anything useful from it. With one exception, they demand that you give a list of current franchisees with their phone number. Except I have seen one of these things from one of my competitors, and they had the office phone number on every one. So it is pathetic. It is worse than a joke. It is massive bureaucracy. It costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to do all the ridiculous things they're required to do, changing these ridiculously unread disclosure documents. It's just farcical. The government's gone out there and said fundamentally, okay, what can we do that will screw over the business community, but really, really be great for blood-sucking parasitical lawyers? And let's do that.
Well, they've got to do something about it, right? I don't know that
they will. I've spoken to the CEO of the Franchising Council of Australia just recently, and I don't refuse to have any part of the FCA, even though I'm supposedly on the board of honour, because I said you don't have any standards, you'll accept anybody, and that to me is garbage. You cannot have a proper association if you've got no standards.
Absolutely.
Now, he is talking about doing some self-regulation of the industry, possibly along the lines of what I'm talking about as an alternative. If that's the case, I'll 100% back him because I believe in ethical franchising. One thing that infuriates me is when people rip off franchisees, and it's really up to the government to protect people. They only think their only concern is for the lawyers and the financial. You know, they say you've got to get your franchise contract read by a lawyer and someone to give financial advice. Well, let's face it, okay? First of all, most lawyers don't know anything about franchise contracts, have nothing meaningful or useful to say. If you cared about franchisees, what you would say to the franchisor is you give your contract and you pay for it to be analysed by an experienced franchising lawyer, and then that is given to every franchisee. It costs them nothing. You have one decent, knowledgeable franchising lawyer give an opinion, comparative opinion, instead of a whole people who don't know what they're talking about. It's completely meaningless, except as a way to keep lawyers busy.
And it's you know, when franchises are starting out, I know I can speak for quite a few here, they're taking a huge risk giving this thing a go. And they're probably taking everything they got out of it.
And they deserve to be protected.
Yes,
they deserve protection, and the government gives them stuff all nothing. Yes, they make you audit the advertising funds. Well, for heaven's sake, we charge anything we like on advertising, as little or as much as possible. What does it matter whether you audit? The audit, though, is at the expense of the franchisee. That comes out of their money. So they're spending money to get work for themselves, and the government says, let's take a chunk of that and use it for an audit. How does that protect anybody? And even if your contract is good, what does that mean in terms of how does it get looked after? Are you given advice? Are you giving help? Are you given enough leads? Would you do it again? Would you advise them? Those kinds of basic questions, that never gets asked. But that's the kind of thing that a prospective franchisee needs to know.
And probably earnestly wants to know.
Yeah. And deserves to know. The government should be about protecting ordinary people against rapacious, blood-sucking, parasitical capitalists. And that's what they bloody well fail to do. And it makes me absolutely livid.
I think I can share that. I totally understand. My parents came here in the 80s. We're very grateful to this country. I certainly wouldn't have the opportunities I would have had unless the government and this country opened its doors up to Sri Lankans that were fleeing war. And my dad, when he first came along, Jim, he was basically, to lack of a better term, was dishwashing, right? But over time,
good on him. He the jobs that are available.
He just went for it. And but what he evolved into is retail, and I've actually never stopped working. I probably shouldn't go on record for this, but I haven't stopped working since I've been about 11. And it's because my dad owned franchises. You might remember Camera House, or rather Fletcher's Photographics at the time. He owned a Godfrey store. And even through it all, I think a lot of what you're sharing, it's funny because it really resonates with me, some of the stuff that he's talked about over the decades. And even today he's working with carpet courts. So he's really a bricks and mortar sort of guy, and that's sort of the exposure I've got. So I think a lot of that passion that you're sharing, Jim, I can almost say that there'd be a good number of franchisees in various networks, not just in gyms, but anywhere for that matter, who probably feel like they need to be better supported. And call to arms on the government. We gotta. I
hear terrible stories. I hear really, really bad stories all the time. People who've been in other franchise systems, they've been terribly treated. I hear so many stories. I'm in touch with the franchisee association. We I want to support them in any way possible. There's disgusting things go on. it really makes me angry to see small business people being screwed, and the government sits back there and says, right on, go ahead and do what you're doing. We're in favour of it. Let you be screwed because we're on the side of the big capitalists. I think it's evil.
Yeah.
And I think if you've got a government, a Labor government that's supposed to protect ordinary people, to do so little is a national disgrace. It is. But government does far more damage. Now, you mentioned immigration, okay?
Yeah.
And we've done very well with immigration policy. But you know one problem we've got? We have a policy which says, let's have 500,000 new people migrate to Australia every year, which I think is overall a good thing. I'm in favour of it. But the government also says, let's use the iron hand of government to make sure that we do not build enough houses to put them in.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny how they've come up with that equation, but they're not able to balance it out on the other side of what's actually needed,
Let's stop you building enough houses. And then the price of housing goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up. So young people can't afford to buy a house. And then they get mad about immigration. But immigration is the problem. Government is the problem. You know, Houston is an example of a city in America that has relatively relaxed zoning. But the average house price in Melbourne and Sydney is around about, the median house price is about $1 million, just over $1 million, okay?
Yeah.
If we had the same, allowing for the exchange rate, if we had the same house price as in Houston, it'd be about $500,000. We pay double the cost of a house, the same house, as they do in Houston, simply because the government makes it impossible to build. We live on a property, this area around here has a 5-acre covenant. I live next door. 5 acres covenant. This is 5 minutes from the station, 5 minutes from shops, 5 minutes from schools. Terrific place to live. One family in 5 acres. We should have 25, 30 people living on that, able to afford decent accommodation for themselves and their families, and supporting local business. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
It is absolutely outrageous the way the government impoverishes us. You've got some young couple, first of all, can't afford to buy a house. And then if they do, they're stuck with this huge mortgage, burdening them down for years or even decades because government policy makes housing so expensive. And then you have, even worse, you have people who can't afford to rent. The level of homelessness is directly related to the cost of housing, the cost of rent. You can increase homelessness to whatever extent you want by simply forcing up the price of rent. The government forces up limits on housing, pushes up the price of rent, and people are dying in the streets because they can't afford to rent, because government policy says you stay there and you die because we don't care about you. This is the outrageous thing about it. It also pollutes the environment, because instead of allowing people to build what they want in the inner city with terrace houses and multi-storey apartments and stuff like that, whatever they want to build, it actually says, no, if you're living next to the station, you've got to have a development that gives a car spot. I don't want to own a car. It doesn't matter, you've got to pay for it. I'd rather cycle to work. It doesn't matter, we don't believe in that. And if you can't afford to live there, then go and live 2 hours out in the country and commute 2 hours to work and 2 hours every home and never see your kids and belch billions of tonnes of carbon dioxide into the air, because government policy destroys the environment.
Yeah, more work needs to be done. I couldn't disagree at all. If I look back, and even the Sydney region is probably prime to all of this.
It's the worst.
It is the space of like 10 kilometres, and you have this complete contrast that exists almost everywhere. I live in a place called Kings Langley, and just 15 k's away, if that, 10 k's, Jim, you've got people that are struggling in the housing commission world. But 15 k's that way, you got Sydney. So it's really, really interesting. It's, I think the overall town planning, to your point, needs to be taken more seriously. And just simply assuming that we're not going to build more houses is actually a really dumb thing to do.
Well, let's stop zoning problems.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. Yeah. This whole thing about you have to have a house on a block with a garden, not adjacent. Why? If you're in the inner suburbs of Melbourne or Sydney, why is that the case? Look, if you allowed people to build what they wanted and everybody could live in the areas that are close to work and stuff, especially young people who don't necessarily want a lot of space around them, what that would mean is the people who really want something for their kids move a bit further out. But those houses are cheaper now. So it's more opportunity to live on the kind of house you want. because people are not forced to buy there who'd rather live in a terrace house or a multi-story apartment into the city. Everybody loses. The only people that don't lose from these insane policies is the people who've got multiple properties, which are going up and up and up and up in value all the time, at the expense of those who can't. Yes. You know, my daughter and her partner wanted to rent an apartment, okay? Not even in the middle of the city or anything, just in Reewood, all right? They went to view one. There was 40 people there trying to get this apartment.
Far out.
And it wasn't even that cheap a rent. Now, I actually said to the agent, try to give them a chance, I said, I personally will pay a year's rent up front in cash, not literally cash, but up front, if you will let my daughter have this apartment. Didn't get it. Now, can you imagine how people who don't have millionaires for father, how they're going to cope with this? It's absolutely shocking.
It is. It is. More work needs to be done. Gosh, I could learn so much from you, and I love the passion that you share, Jim. It's almost like the voices that can't speak up are absolutely coming out through.
Well, I am seriously considering making a run for the upper house of the Victorian State Parliament.
Let's go.
Next year on this issue, because it is a real moral issue of seriousness. And I don't think the majority of people in this state really want ultra expensive housing, ultra expensive rent. I think most people want moderately priced houses that even if they've got a house themselves, if they want their kids to be able to afford to buy a house.
I mean, that's what many of us are thinking about, right? I mean, to your point earlier, what if you don't have that hereditary blessing of I've got a 4-year-old myself, and a lot of the moves that I make are bigger than me. It's about what I can build on as legacy. And
when you're 4-year-old wanting to buy a house, you'll probably be in a situation that if you're a household yourself, you'll probably be able to help them, as I helped my kids, of course. But you shouldn't have to have wealthy parents to be able to buy.
I agree.
I bought my first house as a part-time lawn mowing contractor and student. I bought a house in Eltham, $33,000. Okay, just out of my earnings from my lawn mowing business. You could not even dream of that these days.
No, just that figure alone is crazy. Templestowe and that area, to see what it's like now.
Prices were lower in those days, and I was mowing lawns for, maybe I was charging $10 for a lawn instead of 80 and stuff. But nothing like the comparison.
No, absolutely right. Jim, I've got to say, we could probably keep on speaking about so many different topics, but you're a man of so much wisdom. I'm very graced to have you on the show, as our viewers no doubt are as well. We've definitely a lot to take away from, and just keep doing this amazing thing with Jim's group, because you're inspiring a lot of the sole traders, a lot of the smaller businesses, and you're giving them belief. You're building that belief, and I think the world needs more Jims, and I think the Jim's group will keep going.
Entrepreneurs too.
Yeah,
we need more entrepreneurs. We need people that come out and have a chance to say how great it is to be in a business for yourself and make that work.
Yeah,
it's the most
absolutely
fun. It's the most absorbing career there is. Who want to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer when they could run their own business?
It's the best thing. I couldn't attest that more highly. It's been the best move that I've done, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. So, Jim, from me to you, thank you for jumping on the Whatever It Takes podcast. Very grateful. And can anyone reach you if they have any questions? Do you have a
Jims.net?
There you go. It's approachable. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
You're
Cheers.
welcome.